All right. Well, we are ready to get started. We're so thankful that you all have decided to join us this afternoon. Today's session is brought to you by SQL Data Partners. So our question for you is, do you ever want a helping hand with your SQL Server database? SQL Data Partners offers DBA managed services, which can help you save time, create capacity, and improve efficiencies. So Carlos, Brian, and our other SQL specialists are ready to help you and your team. So you can reach out to us in the chat or contact us through our website, which is sqldatapartners.com. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. We're very fortunate to have Carlos and Brian with us, and we'll turn everything over to them.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's good to be here. Hello, Mr. Brian. You're well today?
Hello, Carlos. Hi, everyone.
So as we are getting started here, what we wanted to do was talk through getting started with SQL Server. And to introduce ourselves, here we go. So, Mr. Brian, you're up first.
Yes, my name's Brian Combs. I've been working with Carlos for a long while now. Been in the SQL Server environment, been working in the SQL Server environment for 15 plus years. Before that, worked on IBM DB2 databases mostly. Just real quickly, started as an accountant, liked the tech side much better, so went back, got my computer science degree, and ever since I've been in the IT world. But everyone does like the fact that I can speak accounting, so that's nice sometimes. And I've been consulting for about 3 years. Previous to that, I was systems analyst, systems administrator, and a director of IT. And live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that's it.
There we go. And so to introduce myself, so I am Carlos Chacon. I am the founder of SQL Data Partners, and I've got 5 kids. There's only 4 of them shown here in this picture because one of them was off at college when we took this photo. I reside in Richmond, Virginia, and so I am on the East Coast, and super happy to be here. We should say, or we should note, that this session is in fact an introductory session, right? So the way we've labeled this is getting started with Select Star. In 2 weeks, we'll have another session on how to change existing data. And then the third session is going to be, there are more than just tables. There's where we get into views, a little bit of security, some of the advanced pieces when it comes to functions and things like working with dates, right? Things like that. So this is the pace that we have. We will be going through some slides. Brian then has some demos. If there are pieces that are outside of what we're presenting, we're happy to discuss those, but we may wait until the end of the session to address them. Okay, so with that, let's jump in. Now, as we go through this, or the queries that we use, we've developed a little database, and it's fairly simple, but it is something that you can use to follow along. So this database, we are calling it Learn SQL, and it has a couple of tables. These tables are set up to help increase understanding. Right. So for those of you who've been working with SQL for a while, you may not see tables that are structured quite this way, but we thought this was the fastest way to help people understand. So as we get into it, a little bit of background before we jump into the actual language itself. So SQL, SQL, we obviously SQL, right? So SQL Data Partners, not like the movie sequel. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it is the programming language for relational databases. So this language was set up by the National Standards Institute some years ago. They have updated it. I believe they updated it in 2013, something like that. And it is the standard that all relational databases must meet. Now, what is the relational database management system? There are two types, right? Relational and non-relational. The relational database management system wants to know and keep track of state changes, where things are. You make a change, it wants to know about it and be able to get that back for you. That's a little bit different from some of the NoSQL environments. So you may have heard of MongoDB or Cosmos DB, right? Those are NoSQL environments. On the relational side, other examples, Brian mentioned DB2. There's MySQL, Oracle, etc. We, of course, are going to be using SQL Server for this series. It's Microsoft's relational database. And because the standards have not kept up with the pace that vendors want to go, each vendor has adopted its unique code set. So in SQL Server, you may hear it referred to as TSQL. So Transact SQL is the Microsoft version of the SQL language. It's still going to go down to that base, and everything we talk about in these sessions are applicable to all the relational databases. However, as you get more advanced and you start dealing with different functions particularly, they may not move or be applicable rather to all of the relational database systems. So TSQL, right? This is the code, right? These are the words that we're gonna use to get information from the database. And again, Microsoft's version is called TSQL. So the database is the keeper of the organization's data, right? We put data into the database, and that's where it gets stored. It's going to hold that data in tables, and those tables have columns, right? So you think of even Excel spreadsheet, right? The most popular database system in the world. You've got tables and columns, and those columns have data types, and we'll get into that in a future session. Okay, so the language syntax is the database grammar for your queries. So if you don't write your query following the syntax rules, you won't get the correct results, or you may end up with an error, right? So correct syntax is what the relational database needs to process your query correctly. And so what we're going to go over is, again, starting from the very beginning, how do I begin creating the language, right? The syntax that I need to get information out of the database. So we've mentioned following along, we use SQL Server Management Studio. That's the application that we use in the series to interact with the database. Now, we're not going to show you how to set up the SQL Server here, but if you want to follow along, you'll need a SQL Server environment. Microsoft does have a free developer edition that you can install on a laptop. Now, be careful about using that long term because it does require it's fairly intensive. It can be. So just think about that. If you already have a SQL Server environment, you can use Management Studio to connect to your environment, depending on the permissions that you have. And you know what? I'm actually going to break here for a second because I feel like we need to see this. And so, Brian, if you're okay, can we actually start? It appears that I don't have a select star example here in my in my slides. So can you take us can you
Sure.
take us through really quick? Just take us through a quick select star, right? The syntax and maybe walking through Management Studio really quick.
Absolutely. I enlarged my font size, so hopefully it's easier to read. So what I'm using here is simply the
I think you may want to enlarge it even just a little bit more, Brian.
okay. Options. So here's how I went to Tools, Options, Fonts and Colors, and there's all kinds of settings you can set here. But that's
I'd go to 18.
you make it 18.
Yeah, make it 18. There we go.
How's that look?
That looks good. That looks good.
So these examples that I'm going to show you actually come from the examples that are in the link that Carlos or we just shared in the message. So, or in the in the messages in the chat. So these are all examples using the sample database. And just a note, in that sample database, the scripts are there to create the tables, but I believe you actually have to create the database before you can create the tables. And I don't think there's a create database script in there. So just real quick, if you have, yeah, it's very simple. You just go up to your data where it says databases here on your right side, and you just right click it and say create database, and you just give it a name. So very simple. Anyway,
and word of caution, don't do that at your work environments unless
right.
you get permission, right? Or you are in charge of them.
Exactly.
Folks tend to get a little excited when new databases get created.
So I need to hide that. And well, this is fun. My screen is locked up on me for some reason. There we go. Okay, so let's very simply. So the format. There's keywords in your in the SQL syntax. Select star. So select is a keyword. From is a keyword. Select star from cat is simply telling us that give me every record in every column in the cat table. So as you can see, when we run select star from cat, I'm getting every single record in every column value, and that's the most basic command or query that you can run.
Yep. Those 4 pieces: select star, from, and the name of your table, right?
Yep.
In this case, our table name is cat.
Right.
And you may have varying tables. We've got cats, dogs, fish in here, right? You might have product, contact, what have you.
So to expand on that, if you didn't want to see all of the columns that we just saw by doing select star, you can select and specify the columns that you actually want to see. So in this example, we're just going to select the name of the cat, the breed of the cat, the color of the cat. So when we run that, we're going to get all of the records again, but we're only getting the 3 columns that we asked for. So that's more what you're usually going to want to do, because usually you don't want every column of the table return, because you're usually looking for specific data. And you can see that in this example, this is included in the zip file that you can download. And what Carlos did here is he actually showed you what you should be getting returned, so you can verify that you ran it correctly. And of course, you're running it what's already there, so it's not likely that you're going to get different results. But here is another example. So instead of running it from cat, we're running it for dog, and we could run this for any table. The syntax is the same for any table that you run it for. How far do you want to go, Carlos? You want to keep going down?
I think so. That actually works, and then so if we can stop there now.
Okay.
Then we'll jump back into the slides, and then I'll give it back to you in a moment. One of the things that we should point out before you go is that you may have noticed. Can you show it again, Brian?
Sure,
I apologize.
Sure. Sorry.
So you may have noticed that Brian selected. So in the file, Brian selected just a piece. So when it does that, if you'll scroll back up and do the dog one again, just that, yeah. So when you hit execute, it will only run what is there.
Exactly.
Right?
So I highlighted it, and there's two ways to execute. You can hit the execute up here in your title bar, or you can hit F5 to execute. So either way works. And another thing that we actually should probably touch on real quick is when you first log into your database, you may come in under a different database table. So often you'll come in and it'll be set to master here. So if I go to run select star from cat, when it's attached to when I'm connected to the master database, obviously it doesn't find cat in that table. So there's two ways to switch to the actual database you're looking for. You can come up here where the databases are listed and just select the database you want, or you can type this command use, and then the database, so where it says learn SQL, that's the database that we're actually using here. So that would be whatever database you want to connect to. And when you actually, when you run that whole command there, it actually changes you to that database.
Would you open up Object Explorer? Since we're kind of in this, I feel like we should take a little test drive through SQL Management Studio there.
So objects, okay.
Yeah, just right there. So your experience, and again, next to us, if you look in the top right corner of where Brian's screen, you'll see a full size. That might be needed to see, because unfortunately we can't expand that right now. So that top level, right, in this case, local host, right, that means Brian installed this on his laptop, right? And so you expand databases. He has a number of databases. We talked about data being stored in a database. Those pieces that he's got, so Enterprise 32, Learn SQL, right, those are examples of the databases. Underneath there, you have tables. So that's where the data then gets stored. So you've got a server, you've got a database, and then tables. So we're getting information out of those tables. Awesome.
That's correct.
Okay. So then with that, I will jump back into the slides. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now, there are additional pieces that we can start adding to our queries. Okay. And we're going to go over data retrieval. So we started that. That is select star from table, right? I'm getting information back. We generally are not going to want all the information. We're looking for specific information, so we're going to want to filter. We may want to sort this information. There's the process of working with functions. There's joins. And then we're going to look at summarizing results. Okay. So filtering data. I don't want to see all the cats. I don't want to see all the dogs. We are going to specify a where clause. Okay, so this is going to be additional syntax. So where is that keyword we're going to add to the end of our select star from dog, where, and then we're going to use some logical operator to help the database know what information we want. So we could do something like, if it's a number, right, it's less than or greater than, it could be equal to, there are these special operators like, again, be careful with those. SQL Server doesn't always handle those well, particularly depending on the number of records you have. You're in a big database, that could be problematic. Or in or not in. So these are some of the key operators that you can use with a where clause. Okay. And you'll forgive me, I can actually not see the Q&A right now or the chat. So if Brian, if you or Amanda even see something, please be sure to let me know. Okay. Again, so where we want to limit records, we can use the where clause. There are other options available to us with the keyword atop or distinct. So what does this then look like? So if we are going to expand, I've included a couple of different things. I've taken all of these filtering options and put them together into a single query. So here we did select, here are our columns from cat. So this should look familiar. So I guess let me just highlight this, right? So I want to do this, here we go. So these are the pieces that should be familiar. Okay, so now I'm adding these filtering options. So where's my keyword? So name of cat, which is a column that I've selected here. It doesn't have to be in the select list. It just has to be from this table, right? So where name of cat is like Gar. In this case, I was looking for a Garfield, right? Using that like operator.
And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just real quick on the like operator, you have a couple of different wildcard characters you can use. % means anything after. So in this example, anything that starts with GAR, no matter what's after that, it's going to show. There's also a question mark, which you can use for a single character.
There we go. Thank you. I've added another line here. So the order by is the data may not be ordered in the way that I want to see it returned. So I add an order by, and now the names will be in alphabetical order. By default, it is ascending, right? A to Z. If you wanted to be in the opposite order, you could add a descending option there. Okay. So the next piece we're going to get to is joins, right? So joins, two things that are, that need to come together. So it reminded me of Bert and Ernie, right? For those of you who have kids, or even like myself, right? Growing up, I watched a fair amount of Sesame Street. So to jump into the example for our database that we put together, so we have a pet owner, we've got dogs, and we have cats. Okay. Now, dogs and cats don't necessarily relate, but in this case, the idea is we're looking for people who have cats and people who also have dogs. Okay, so we can have this. So there's again, in this example, there's a relationship because these two things are the same. We can join cat and dog to see which cats and dogs live in the same house. Right? So in order to do that, we need to come up with a join option. Okay, so the first one is join or left join. Okay, and that syntax looks like this. Again, I've got my select from. Here I'm now introducing another column. So to this point, we've only been talking about one table. Now I'm introducing a second table, and I have to tell the database how these two things are related. So I'm telling it what kind of join I want and the table name. And then I'm telling it using the keyword on how the tables are related. In our example, we've worked very hard to keep the columns the same name. That may or may not be the case in your database. So just beware. They don't have to be the same name to join. And that can be problematic. So when I do this, I am going to get all of the dogs, but I also want information from cats where there is a dog and a cat in the same house, right? Does that make sense? So here you'll see I have dog. These three, the first three columns are all from dogs. The fourth column is from cats. That information, name of cat, only exists in this table. I've joined them. And when I do that, my result is going to look something like this. Okay. So Garfield and Odie are in the same house. But Laddie, Jack, and Ace do not have other cats. Ace appears to be connected to two cats, Jake and Bella. Right? So now I've done that join and I'm getting that information. So hopefully that makes sense. So that is a left join. I'm getting all the information from dogs and the information from cats where they meet. Now, a lot of times I only want information where there is both, right? So again, I'm selecting my information from dog. In this case, I'm using the keyword interjoin. Before I had a left outer join, now I'm doing an inner join cat on, and then how the tables are connected. When I do that, I'll get this, and here you'll see that all of the columns have data, because in order to be returned, there has to be a match in both tables. If there is no match, you don't get returned. And then the last one, which admittedly is the least common, more often than not, we're going to create our queries to do left joins, because most of the time we think just structurally, like, as English speakers particularly, thinking left to right, it just makes a lot more sense to us. But we could do the opposite. We could say, hey, you know what? Instead of all of the dogs and just the cat information, I want all of the cats and just the dog information where it matches. Now, the way that you set that is the order of these tables, right? Helps you which one you're grabbing information from. Okay, so here again, I got my select from right outer join. That's the relationship on, and then in this case, I'm ordering by cat. So these are the join types that we're going to go over, and Brian's going to share a little bit more about. So we've done the initial select, right? We're going to have an inner join, a left outer join, and then a right outer join. So awesome. So with that, I think we are ready to jump into some more demos.
Okay.
Okay, man. We've got a whole bunch of questions here.
Okay.
So I can answer the one. So Alan, what is MySQL? MySQL is an open source database that is now managed by Oracle system. So it's another version of a database. So hopefully that helps. And Amanda, I am not able to answer these. So can you help me as I'm going through this? Give up some speed for what versus using structs? Do local files? Give up some speed. So filtering. So anytime SQL Server has to sort through data, right? That's what we call expensive. So I think that was in reference to using the filter, the like options. So I can get into that a little bit towards the end, because you have to understand about execution plans and how SQL Server looks stuff up. But for these purposes, just know that using the like can be how is different than sort? So order by is the sorting mechanism.
Right. Some other databases actually use different syntax, and I believe I've seen a couple of them that actually use the sort keyword. I don't remember which ones, but yes, in SQL Server it's order by.
Yeah. Yeah. So structures, right? So hang on, Kevin. We can talk about that one later. That'd be above what we were looking to talk about today.
Okay. Is that all the questions? You were ready to move on?
It looks like that is the questions that I see. Does anybody else have anything in the chat? Yeah, if you want to keep going, Brian, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, so real quick, remember when we talked about the top and the distinct operators, and the distinct is good. So for example, in dog, if I wanted to know what colors of dogs I have in our database, then I can do select distinct. So it won't give me every, for example, if I've got 10 black dogs, it's only going to show me black one time. So in this case, you're just getting a distinct list of the dogs. So this is just showing us what color of dogs we have in our database. And that's all from just using the distinct keyword. And obviously, we've got way more than 10 records in the database, so we're getting a subset of the data return, and it's just telling us what we're looking for here. Now, you can also do it with two columns, and here's an example where you have the color of dog and the breed of dog. So in this case, we're going to get the color of dog and the breed of dog combinations. So you see that we've got a whole lot of black dogs with different types. That's not telling us how many of these dogs we have, but it's telling us the unique combination of color of dog. Let me move this up a little bit so it's easier to see. Color of dog and the breed of dog. So we're getting a whole lot more records returned there. Does that make sense to everyone? Put it in the Q&A if not, and we'll cover it in some more detail.
Yeah, maybe we should look for some thumbs up, right? Or
right.
Any questions there on the distinct? Okay, looking good.
So then, along with distinct, we in the slides we saw the top, and there's two different ways to use the top command, and one is to limit. In this example, we're going to select the top 5 owners, owner name, owner age, and owner gender from pet owner. Now, in this example, we're only going to get the top 5 records that SQL returns, because we're not giving it any order by. It's just going to give us the first 5 records it comes across. So in this example, you can see the results below. Now you can also use a %. So if you, I've rarely if I use this, but it's available. And if you wanted to see the top 1% of your pet owners, just like above, you can do the %. And obviously, if you change the %, you're going to get. So if I've got 250 records, I'm going to get 25 in this case. I forget how many records are in this table, but so we got 36 rows, which is telling me we've probably got somewhere in the range of 360 records. So that's the 2 different ways you can use top. And I will say this: the reason I use top a lot of time is when I want to see the data that is in our database when I'm creating. When I'm developing a query or a procedure, and we're not going to get into that today, but a lot of times it's really good to see some of the data that you want that's in the system to help you determine how to develop your query. And you don't want to return a million rows just for example of getting a sample of the data. So you can just, I use select top 100 a lot, just to see the top 100 rows, and
that's very common, particularly like you mentioned when you're trying to understand where the data is. So you may not know everything that's in the table. So doing that select top 100 can be an easy way just to be like, well, what's in this, right? And you
Right.
start looking at the data, and it can be a good
I
way to start.
mean, you can always come over to your Object Explorer and drill down to and go down to your table that you're looking at, and you can see the columns that are there. But just because you can see the columns doesn't always tell you what each column is holding. You know, so seeing the actual data in the table helps a whole lot.
Unfortunately, column names are not required to be intuitive or understandable, right?
So now we're going to talk about some of the operators such as equal. So in this example, it's equal. We talked about the like operator in the slides. You also have not equal, greater than, less than. Those are a lot of the primary ones that you're going to use. And there are some others. But in this case, we're looking for the cat named Garfield. So we're selecting the 3 columns that we want to see from the table cat, where the name of the cat is Garfield. So we're only getting, if there was more than one Garfield in cat, we would see it multiple times. But in this case, it's only showing us one. And then let's get down to the less than operator. So in this example, we're looking for the dog from the dog table. We want to know the name, breed, and color of the dogs, where it's been with the owner less than 2 months. So months with the owner tells us how many months that owner's had it. So if I want to see the dogs that have basically new dogs to the owner, that's what you get. And these are just all different examples of how to use the filtering, which is in the where clause. So
And
now,
the where clause is your best friend.
yes.
Right? You want to use a where clause.
Oh, absolutely.
Way too many times where people can get into trouble is when they forget where clauses, right?
I have a really good example in the next session that we're doing in the updates, where if you forget to use the where clause, you're in big trouble. So now we're going to show you the like operator, and this is the same example that Carla showed you before, but you'll actually see the results here. So now we're returning any cat that starts with GAR and anything else after the GAR. So all the names of these cats. I know this is kind of small. I'm surprised that when I change my options, it doesn't increase the size of the
yeah, they're independent, unfortunately.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got 9 dogs that start with GAR.
You may want to just show. I wonder if you can expand that because the examples are in the bottom. It might be easier just to use it from the notepad above, if that makes sense. So if you decrease the size of there you go. Yep, take that and pull that down.
Oh yeah.
So we're kind of seeing the results there
because he's got the results right here.
Yeah.
That does make sense, but you can still see at the bottom what I'm getting. Right. So that's a good.
We're going to keep you honest, Brian, right? But
right.
Well,
I will say that I think I've made a few inserts to this table, so you may get slightly different results than what you're seeing in what they should look like. Okay, so now the next operator is the in operator. And the in operator is basically like an equal operator, where in this example where I said if I were to say where name of dog equals Pluto, then I would get all dogs with Pluto, and then I would have to run another query that says where name of dog equals Lassie. Well, the in allows you to combine multiple values that you want to search for. So in this example, we're looking for the dog, the name of the dog that's either Pluto, Lassie, Benji, or Old Yeller. And I don't have to run 4 separate queries to get those results. And you can see below the actual results that we should get, and you can see that we're matching up just fine. So you're keeping me honest here. And so hopefully that was good. Now I don't know if we cover not in. I can't remember, but you can also use not in. And if I use not in here, it would show me all the dogs that are not named Pluto, Lassie, Benji, or Old Yeller. And I can just do that real quick and run that. And then you can see I'm getting all the other dogs in that case. And here's another example of in where we're selecting the pet owners that are adolescents or teenagers, basically. So we're looking for any owner who is 8, 10, 12, 14, or 16. I guess we're only looking for the even ages in this case. So we're getting that. Now there's also a between operator, and we'll probably cover that down the road, where I could say, give me owner age between 8 and 16, and that would give me all the date ages in between. But we'll cover that
Ryan,
later.
before we go on, the first query you did had some red, right? This one does not. Why do the queries have parentheses, or why do some of the data have single quotes?
That's a very, very good point. So when you're searching for any character value, such as, and we haven't talked about the different character types yet, but if you're searching for anything other than a number, let's say, so any kind of alphanumeric value, you have to have the single quotes around it, which is why the SQL Server Management Studio identifies those in red, so that you can tell which ones you've quoted. Makes it really easy if you forget to put a quote on one of them, then the rest of your query screen looks really, really crazy after that. So kind of helps you keep your syntax correct. And the parentheses is used for an in or not in operator, simply to group that set of values. So just like usually, I think in your math class, when you had a set and you usually had braces or parentheses around it, that's the reason for that. And I don't know if that's a good explanation, Carlos, if you want to.
Yeah, I think the big piece for me is if I'm working with text, I need single quotes.
Right, exactly.
That's 99% of the time, right?
And also,
server, I'm a text. Numbers, right. It can deal with, right? It's like, hey, I like numbers.
Right.
Text, I need the quotes.
And also, anytime you have anything in parentheses, you always have to watch for your opening and closing parentheses, or else the system's going to yell at you because for not having the closing parentheses. So then back, we already covered that. So that was, and now we're getting into the not in operator, which I just really showed you because I forgot it was right here. And also just in SQL Server Management Studio, I didn't cover this, but there's two types of comments. One is the / with the asterisk, and you've got that, and then you've got the asterisk / at the end. So anything between that it will be considered comments and ignored by your when you execute it.
Right.
The other one, so that could cover multiple lines. So for example, you see up here where this is commented out, where the results are. So I can do multiple lines there. If I just want to comment out just a single line, you can do 2 dashes, and that comments out that one specific line. So I just ran this. So this is the not in. So this is going to give us the name, breed, and color of the dog, where the name of the dog is not Hercules, Spike, Pongo, Ace, Clifford, Laddie, or Rover. So I think that should make sense now. And then here's combining operators. So when we're filtering data with the where clause, often it's just not one field or one column that you want to return. You want to filter the data by. So here's an example where we want to filter. We want Pluto, Lassie, Benji, or Old Yeller, and we want those dogs that have been with their owner for over 24 months. So remember, in is going to return any of these values. It's basically like saying name of dog equals Pluto, or name of dog equals Lassie, or name of dog equals Benji is really, I guess, a good explanation of how that works. So when we run this guy, and we get the two results that we should. We've got Pluto and Benji, so we've only got two of those that have been with their owner for more than 2 months. And the OR operator, which I just kind of commented about on the name of dog. In this case, we could put a whole bunch of ORs in here. Now, be careful when you're using the OR. When you're doing a whole lot of operators and you're using OR, you've got to be real careful about putting parentheses around any multiple OR statements that you might have, or else you're going to get undesired results. But in this case, we're looking for the name of dog that's Pluto, Lassie, Benji, or Old Yeller that's in that set, or the months with the owner is greater than 24. So in this case, remember, we only got 2 records when we did the AND, because we only had two of these names of dogs that were with their owner greater than 24. Well, in this case, we're getting Pluto, Lassie, Benji, and Old Yeller, regardless of how long they've been with their owner, because of this or the months with the owner is greater 24. So we're getting all other dogs that have been with their owner for over 24 months. And
yeah, this is where now order of operations and whatnot, like you mentioned, becomes important, and ensuring that we have everything lined up, because and obviously testing, is important, because we could accidentally either include data we didn't intend or excluded data we didn't intend. Absolutely. And this is now the fun piece, right, of writing SQL, is trying to make sure we have the right data there.
So now we get to the order by clause, which is our sorting keyword, and the rest of our query here is going to look very similar to what we've already done. So we're looking for cats that are that start with GAR. They're like GAR, and then we want to order by the name of the cat this time. I don't know if you remember, but when we ran it before, these were just in the order that got returned, that the table, probably the order of the table was that's containing it. But sometimes with SQL, it just returns it. However it's returning it is how it's going to show on the screen, I guess, is a good way of saying that. So in this example, you can see everything's in alphabetical order. And actually in our I'm not going to show it here, but in our pet owner table, we actually had 2 values in there that had a leading space. So somebody, when they entered it, put a space in the beginning of it. And when you run it in alphabetic, when you try to order by, in fact, let's just do that real quick, because I think this is interesting. And I'm not formatting this correctly right now, just so I can quickly do this, but I'm going to say, and I don't want where, I want order by owner name, I think it is. And when I run this guy, you can see Donald Trump and Joe Biden are showing up at the very beginning of our table, and that's because if you look at these the names, there's actually a space between them. Everything else is in alphabetical order. So I guess what this shows you here is that you can have issues with your data that can cause some invalid results too, because if you were expecting this to be in alphabetical order, obviously Donald Trump and Joe Biden are not the first 2 on the list. And we cover how to fix that in the next session, just so you know. But I just think that's interesting to see how when somebody enters data incorrectly, sometimes it can skew your results. SQL is doing what it's doing, or what it's supposed to do, in returning. It sees that space character as the beginning of the sort, or the alphabet, I guess. I'm not sure what you actually call it there. So we have the order by ascending. Now, we talked about getting into the order by some more. We talked about before that there's ascending and descending. if I leave the ASC off for ascending, it defaults to that. So you don't always have to put the ASC, because by default SQL
It has to choose one, right? It has to choose one, so it's gonna
Right.
default.
And the one it chooses is ascending. So
Yeah.
so here we're returning our cats ascending order, and you can see that they're in alphabetical order. Now we can order by name of cat descending. And I'm going through this pretty quickly to try to get through everything we need to get through here. So now you can see that in this.
And you'll forgive me, Brian. So as you do that, which we all appreciate. So for those of you who are there, if you have questions or something's not quite sitting right, feel free again to put those into the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll look to circle back on them.
Right.
If we're going too fast, let us know that too. Right? We'd rather spend a few more minutes, right, talking it over than you not understanding.
So like I said, this was the same query as before, other than that the fact that we're ordering by the name of the cat descending. So you can see that these are now in the descending order. You can also order by more than one column. So in this example, we want to order by the name of cat. So your name of cat's going to be the first sort, and then the breed, then secondarily it's going to sort by the breed of the cat. So we're on that guy, and you can see that our results here. The name of the cat is in ascending order. The breed of the cat is in ascending order, but it's also limited by the name of the cat. So name of cat gets sorted first, and then for each name of the cat, it sorts the breed of cat in ascending order at that point. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a little confusing sometimes. And then we can order by multiple columns, and basically the same scenario here, except we're going to sort the months with owner descending. Is that right? Name of cat, yeah, okay. Months with owner descending, and then the name of the cat ascending. So it's first going to sort by the month of the owner, and if we had two that had the same number of months with the owner.
Yeah, it's a bad example, Brian. Right?
It would actually put them. Then it would put the secondary sort as name of cat. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. You can also, this is something that I've used occasionally, but very rarely. So I don't know how much we want to talk about it, but you can actually sort by the column number, which is simply the order that you have it in your query.
And I think we put this in to show you, if you come across something like this in the wild, that's what it's doing. I think to Brian's point, we don't recommend using it because it can get confusing,
right?
Particularly as your queries get larger and larger and larger.
Yeah, this is actually saying order by name of cat and then the secondary sort breed of cat. Right. Normally, it's best to spell it out. Just it makes it easier to read.
Yeah, the reason that's tricky is because Brian could add a new column up at the top, right? And now all of a sudden my sort's all wacky, right?
Whoop. So if I went to, let's see, what are we on the cat table? So if I said owner, if I can type owner identifier, we'll put this guy over there. Now I'm no longer sorting by name of cat and breed of cat. I'm sorting by owner identifier and name of cat. So that's where it really becomes. That's why I really don't like using that. So try not to use that unless you come across some code that's using that. You'll know, like Carlos said, you'll know what that means. So I know we're hitting our hour, but we still have a little more to cover. So we're just going to continue on, right, Carlos?
That's right. So you're welcome to stay with us. We're going to continue to talk. If you have questions, put them in there. And if you need to peel, we certainly understand.
Yeah, we're getting to the fun stuff now. So if you do have time, still have time to stick with us, We're getting into the good stuff now. Now we're talking about the join operators that we discussed earlier. And remember the little chart where Carlos showed us the inner join, the left outer join, right outer join, and I don't think full outer join was on there, but that was another one of them. So basically inner join, and this is the same example, we're joining from dog to cat by the owner identifier. And what this is going to do, since it's an inner join, it's going to give me only records where there's an owner that has a dog and a cat. So it's in both the dog and the cat table. Otherwise, it's not going to show it to you. And I know that can be confusing, but so shoot us, if that doesn't make sense to you, let us know. We can try to explain it a little further. So here we're getting, these are, so there's only, I don't know how many that is, 10. Oh, I didn't actually run did I run the command? So I'm getting, that doesn't make sense. What did we do here? So we're interjoining. Okay, so there's 213 owners, or there's 213 dogs and cats that are
in the same house.
Yeah, in the same house. Now you have to be careful here because since dog is our first, we may get multiple dogs that have. So we could have one dog that has 3 cats in the house. And we might see the same dog listed 3 times. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when you're joining the tables, that you can cause yourself to get duplicate values of your main table sometimes. Just, I guess in this case you would get the cats also. So you could have the vice versa. You could have cat, because we're doing an inner join, you could have the same cat with multiple dogs in the house. Now here we're doing a left outer join. So dog is our primary table that we're using. We're using a left outer join to cat on the owner identifier. So what this is going to tell us is it's going to show us all the dogs, and it's going to show us whether they have a cat or not in the table. So in our results, you see that we have some dogs here that have a name of cat in the column, but since we did a left outer join to cat, we're also going to see all the other dogs that don't have a match in the cat table, and the null value is going to show, which null just basically means the absence of data, or the absence of a value in that column. So left outer join, if you want everything from the primary table and you want the records that actually match in the secondary table, then left outer join is the way to go. And we talked about the right outer join, which, just to say up front, I don't remember the last time I used right outer join, because normally I would just switch the tables and put cat first and then say left outer join to dog. But it's there and you can use it. And I guess there's some times where maybe it makes sense to use it. So in this case, even though we're doing from dog, since we're doing a right outer join to cat is really the primary table we're looking at. So it's going to return all cats and whether they have a dog in their house. And you're good. And even with these, since on the join, you have to be careful that you could get, in this example, you could get one cat that has 2 dogs in the house. So that cat's going to show up in your results twice. So just be wary of that, or be
mindful.
Right, mindful of that. Full outer join we did not talk about, but full outer join, I'm just going to cover real quick. It's going to show me everything for both tables. So it's going to, if you saw those circles that Carlos showed you before, it would just have both circles fully colored in. And so let's do that real quick. And we don't have the example below. So in this case, you can see that I have a whole lot of cats that don't match, that are not, a whole lot of dogs that don't have a cat in the house. That's what the null values are. And then we get down to the cats, and you can see we also have the same, where we have cats and all values in the dog. So that's what a full outer join. It returns all of the records from both tables. And if it has a match in the other table, it's going to show you that value based on the owner identifier. Does that make? And now we're.
Again, I would say full outer joins is less common.
Yeah, you don't normally use it. You know, occasionally though you'll come across the reason to use it, but I would say for this, probably for this level, don't focus on that one. I just wanted you to see that it is there, and that's one of the join options. Now we're down to manipulating data and aliases.
I think that's actually where we wanted to get to, right, for today, Brian. I think we've gone through, we've talked about how to put together the queries, syntax. We've gone through operators, filtering, and joins. So that was kind of the goal of today, and so I think we will again open it up for questions.
Yeah, there is one other thing, just real quick, that I'd like to cover. So just the syntax order that we've talked about going forward, and we didn't really spell it out so much, but the way that you write your queries is select the column names that you want from the table, or so from is your table, select are the values you want from that table, so the columns you want from that table. Where is your filter? Group by is, if you want to, we haven't got to that point yet, but group by, we can group by different values. So for example, if we wanted to see a pet owner and how many dogs they have, we could group by the pet owner. Having and order by, just to be, so that's your basic syntax order, and then your order of out. But just to be clear, that is not exactly the and this is probably best for the next session, but just to be clear, that's not exactly the order that SQL processes that query. So we'll talk about that in the next session, but I just wanted everyone to see what the actual syntax was.
Yeah, thank you. So Jeff has a question. He says, any recommendations on where to obtain a list of commands that can be used? And that is that's a great question.
Yeah, I don't have one off the top of my head.
Right.
But I've searched that before, and then there's many out there.
Right. So there are so it's not really CRUD operations. What am I thinking of? But so in terms of data interacting with data, right? Select, insert, update, and delete are the four kind of typical ones, right? Then there is a whole list of, so then we get into CRUD operations, which is like creating tables and creating views and those kinds of things. So in terms of interacting with the data, those are the select, update, insert, and delete are the four kind of standards. And we'll go over those. We focused on select today, right? The next session is on those other three. If we find a list, Jeff, I will. But it sounds like a great thing that SQL Data Partnership put together and stick on their website.
That's right. Yeah, I have come across some good lists, and I'll search, and we should be able to come up with a good one to share with you. The problem is, at the basic level, sometimes you get a list of all of the commands that SQL offers, and you can get overwhelmed by it. So
right, that's right. Yeah, because you're getting into things like database administration and some of the functionality that's available, right? So even in this session, right, Kevin was talking about tabular models and interacting with that kind of stuff, and it can be challenging. Okay, so with that, I don't know that I see any other questions. So thank you, Eliza. Thanks for everybody who's attended.
SQL Data Partner.